Douglas Murray, what is the... How can you construct a narrative that, you know, unites under one umbrella, if you like, on a rainy day, you know, a hedge fund manager in Weybridge with a young Muslim lad growing up in Bradford?
It would be very hard to create it if you were trying to do so from scratch. Fortunately, we're not doing it from scratch. I think you can create a shared British identity through our shared values, through our shared culture, through our history, our past, and that if you teach that and you transmit it well, it's something which anyone can feel a part of.
What aspect of that history do you emphasise?
All sorts of things. You emphasise, apart from anything else, the good and the bad. There's a feeling that at some points in our past we might only have celebrated the good things in our culture. Some people would argue in recent years we've only celebrated the bad. You've got to teach people pride and also awareness of pitfalls.
What's the pride then? Right, you know, in invention, industry, culture?
In all sorts of things. People feel pride in different... Some people feel pride in our sporting achievements. Some people feel pride in our cultural achievements. I think most people feel a bit of all of these things. I think the key thing, though, is that when people talk about a shared British identity, they tend to assume that you're excluding people somehow. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the thing here, the key thing is you have a core culture. A culture on which all sorts of variations are played, all sorts of different people pursue different things around it, but that they know what the core is that they're riffing around.
What is the core?
Is that Benjamin?
The core.
The core in this case is Britain, is British identity, is the British history, British culture, British achievements, writing, philosophy, art, architecture.
But that's multiculturalism. You just said a lot of things there.
Yes, but and they're all...
Multiculturalism. I mean, Britain, by definition, is multicultural. The Celts, the Picts, the Scyllas, all the early tribes that came here came with a different culture. Even the Romans brought a culture. So the new cultures that come here now are doing what we should be doing here, is embracing them. And I would say not even tolerating them, but embracing them, because that is what is at the core of being British.
Yes.
Not sitting down. If Pickles said, you know... Mr. Eric Pickles said, you know, he wants to come up with an idea of what Britishness is. Could you imagine a group of men, probably, in suits, sitting around a table trying to define what it is as British?
You shouldn't, as I say, it shouldn't be invented. You're not having to invent something. It's something that exists. You just have to identify.
Well, yeah, what about empire?
Empire would be part of it. You would teach the good things about empire, and you teach the bad things about empire.
Douglas Murray, this is actually about class, isn't it? This is about socio-economics.
To a great extent, yes. People who come into a country tend to be on the lower socio-economic class when they begin, and gradually, over decades and then indeed centuries, they come up. So yes, to an extent that's the case, and yes, to an extent it's true that there has always been immigration in this country. In the last 60 years it has been far, far larger than at any previous point in our history, and so some of these debates are now a lot more febrile than perhaps they were
can't be more
then.
Than any time
I'm afraid there was. I mean, the amount of Huguenots who came to this country over the course of a century was the same number of people that were immigrating into Britain in a few months under New Labour. So it was a different, but it was just a different pace, and it's not necessary to pretend that away. It's also not necessary to pretend away the fact that although we have immigration, there has also always been a sense of identity in this country, which should not be ignored, and it should not be pretended away. And a lot of people now say, well, Britain has always been a country of immigrants, therefore we have no identity that's British, or no identity here. We do, people feel it, and a lot of damage is done when you tell people not only do you not have an identity, you don't have the right to an identity.
Let's go to the... go on, very quickly.
I was born in this country, educated in this country, and my identity is precisely not having that identity. I think the sense of Britishness is not having that identity.
That might be fine for you, but a lot of other people it might not be. A lot of other people want to feel an identity, want to feel a sense of pride in an identity. They might not want to, like you, celebrate not having an identity, but celebrate having one.
I think that is what Britishness is.
What is wrong with encouraging that pride of being British? And that was also help us to challenge extremism and all those people who are indulging in anti-national activities.
It's very dangerous.
We need to work together
what's
to
dangerous?
combat that.
It's very un-British to think like that. That's my view.
It's very un-British to have an idea of being British.
Exactly. And when you're abroad,
that's an interesting paradox,
recognising what that gentleman said, when you're abroad, you do have that feeling of Britishness because you somehow know what it is. But it's very nuanced, very complicated. But the idea of British people wandering around saying, I'm proud of being British, isn't very British.
A lot of people do feel that, and I don't think you should pretend that they don't have that identity or shouldn't feel it. But if I just quickly on this, another thing that is worth considering is the fact that, you know, historically and around the world, what we have here is pretty unique. It's not completely unique, but very few other countries have this level of tolerance, decency, acceptance, and so on. And that isn't accidental. It is because there have been people in this country who have thought this through before. There is a tradition of philosophy in this country, even a religious tradition in this country, which has been accepting of people, and which we should know about if we're going to celebrate it.
But I think that if you get somebody to come up with an idea of what it is to be British, you will lose that multi-layered...
You're not coming up with it.
That will evolve. There's a difference between evolving a British identity evolving over time and celebrating multiculturalism and actively promoting that people live separately. There's a massive difference between the two.
Every time I ask somebody to tell me what is Britishness, and to just put it in a sentence, they can never do it. Because the things that make me proud of being British are different, probably, to the things that make you proud of being British. I am proud of the working class struggle here.
But there will be some commonality. Yeah, there will be some things in common.
Yeah.
And those
freedom of speech.
Yeah, freedom of speech, rule of law, democratic process, tolerance, acceptance, etc. These are the similarities. That's what we should focus on.
Sorry?
What freedom of speech? You ban television stations in Britain.
Let's talk about that in a minute.
Freedom of speech, which means Benjamin Zephaniah, who happens not to be a monarchist, can upset this gentleman who happens to be, and that's fine, because that's in this country. It is the gentleman there is right on one thing. It is quite rare around the world to be able to be in a country and to say you don't want the head of state for it to be fine. But in this country, it is fine. That is part of the tradition. There is a long tradition of anti-monarchist activity in this country. That is part of it. It's not accidental.